The restaurant buzzed with chatter, silverware clinking against plates, and laughter echoing from well-dressed customers. Yet, in the midst of it all, a young black woman stood quietly near the entrance, wearing a simple blouse and jeans. The staff glanced at her with disdain, mistaking her for someone far below their standards. Within moments, a waitress sneered and pointed at the dirty tables, demanding she start cleaning up. No one knew the truth, that the woman they had just humiliated wasn't a stranger wandering in. She was the new owner, standing silently, witnessing the very culture she was about to change forever. Her name was Elena Carter, a 34-year-old entrepreneur whose journey had been carved out of hardship, resilience, and relentless determination. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, Elena's childhood was filled with financial struggles. Her mother worked double shifts as a nurse, while her father juggled odd jobs just to keep food on the table. Those early years ignited something in Elena. She excelled academically, pushing herself beyond expectations, not just for personal success, but to honor her parents' sacrifices. After college, she entered the corporate world, where she quickly rose through the ranks with her intelligence and unshakable work ethic. But Elena was never content working under someone else's vision. She dreamed of building something of her own, something that would not only prove her worth but also create opportunities for others who often went unseen. After years of careful planning, Elena purchased her first restaurant, a struggling but historic place that had once been the pride of the community.
If you believe in justice, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story that matters.
The staff had no idea ownership had changed hands, as the transition was set to be formally announced later that week. Elena decided to visit quietly, without fanfare, to observe her employees. She wanted to see how they treated customers and one another when no one was watching. She believed culture was the true measure of any workplace. What she saw that evening, however, shocked her to the core and would change the restaurant forever. The moment Elena walked in, she sensed tension in the air. The restaurant was busy, but instead of teamwork and warmth, there was irritation, sharp voices, and dismissive tones echoing between staff and customers. She watched as a middle-aged manager barked orders, never once offering encouragement. A young busboy struggled to carry heavy trays, only to be mocked by his co-workers. And then came the most personal blow, directed at her. Standing near the entrance, Elena examined the decor, running her fingers across the faded wood that once gave the place its charm. A waitress, noticing her, frowned deeply. Without hesitation, she snapped, "If you're just standing there, grab a rag and clean those tables." The words hung in the air, coated with arrogance. Other employees laughed quietly, assuming Elena was perhaps an applicant for kitchen work or, worse, someone who didn't belong in their space at all. Elena's chest tightened, but she stayed silent. She wanted to see how far their assumptions would go. Another waiter gestured impatiently toward her. "Come on, don't just stand there. Customers are waiting." The humiliation stung, not because of the work itself, but because of the tone, the dismissal, the way they had reduced her to nothing without a single question about who she was. She quietly walked through the dining area, watching as employees cut corners, ignored customer complaints, and treated anyone who seemed less important with outright disrespect. This wasn't just a staff problem, it was a toxic culture. A culture where arrogance thrived and kindness was absent. By the time Elena circled back to the front desk, the decision was already made in her heart. These people had no idea who she was, but soon they would. The restaurant she purchased wasn't just an investment. It was a reflection of her life's mission, to transform places of exclusion into spaces of dignity. What unfolded next would leave the staff speechless, and remind everyone in that building never to underestimate the person standing before them. The manager, noticing Elena still lingering, marched over with irritation painted across his face. "Look," he said sharply. "If you're not going to help, you need to leave. We don't have time for loiterers." At that moment, Elena drew a steady breath. She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather folder. Inside were the official documents, the contract with her signature, the deed of ownership, the paperwork that made her the new head of this establishment. She laid the folder on the counter, the golden seal gleaming under the dim lights. The staff looked confused at first, then pale with realization as their eyes scanned the pages. "I don't think you understand," Elena said firmly but calmly. "I'm not here to clean your tables. I'm here because this is my restaurant now." The words struck like thunder. The room fell silent. Forks froze midair. The arrogant manager's mouth fell open, his face draining of color. The same waitress who had ordered her to grab a rag stood paralyzed, her earlier smirk replaced with disbelief. Elena didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She simply let the truth speak for itself. For too long, this place had operated on arrogance and disregard. But starting today, everything was about to change. The announcement rippled through the restaurant like a tidal wave. Some employees hung their heads in shame, realizing how terribly they had behaved. A few whispered apologies, their voices trembling. Others, especially those who had quietly suffered under the toxic environment, felt a spark of hope ignite within them. Elena addressed everyone, her voice strong yet compassionate. She explained her vision. A workplace built on respect, empathy, and service, not fear and humiliation. She promised that those willing to embrace this change would grow with her. But for those who thrived on cruelty and arrogance, their time here was over. The manager who had barked at her was dismissed that very night. The waitress who had mocked her was given a choice: commit to retraining or leave. For the first time in years, the staff realized that accountability had finally arrived. Over the following weeks, Elena worked side by side with her employees, not above them. She cleaned tables, carried trays, and listened to every suggestion. Slowly, the culture shifted. The restaurant, once on the brink of collapse, began to flourish. Customers noticed the difference, the warmth, the service, the renewed energy. But the impact went far beyond sales or reputation. Elena's story spread across the community, inspiring others to look past appearances, to treat every person with dignity, and to never underestimate someone based on assumptions. For Elena, it wasn't just about owning a restaurant. It was about proving that leadership isn't defined by status or outward appearances. It's defined by character. And for everyone who witnessed that unforgettable night, one lesson remained etched in their memory. Respect costs nothing, but it can change everything.